Johnson, it's very nice to meet you, even though it's via Zoom. And congratulations on the Planning Advocate Award from Illinois APA.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so honored.
I have to admit, I'm a little bit of I'm geeking out a little bit because I get to interview you on this. So as chair of the awards group, I kind of managed the awards for this. And when your name came up in discussion about nominees, everyone got very excited. A lot of people lit up and talking about this because of the context and how we know about you, not as an urban planner, but as an artist originally, about the Folded Map Project. So I was wondering if maybe you would just kind of give us an introduction into kind of your journey as to how Folded Map came into being and how we learn about you through that process.
Oh, yes, definitely. Thank you so much. Well, Folded Map is an art project. However, it explores Chicago's segregation and disparity and how it impacts our present day lives and social interaction through examining it using Chicago's grid map. I think everyone who visits Chicago, everyone who grew up in Chicago, we've normalized how segregated our city is to the point where we can joke about it. We can always say, yes, if you ride our red line train, you will notice how it goes from being predominantly white from the north side, and you ride the train to the south side, and it just magically transforms to being predominantly Black. And all my life, I've heard of that analogy, but because of my experience growing up in high school, traveling 15 miles north to go to high school, I realized there's so many more examples of how segregation and our city's history of discriminatory housing practices has contributed to how our city looks today. And so I wanted to create a project that just clear-cut showed what it looks like today, and also offer an opportunity for people to consider how we could kind of dismantle and build a bridge across our geographic and segregation divide to dismantle it. And it kind of all started as a seed of an idea when I was just a 13-year-old girl going to high school from Inglewood, and getting introduced to what my city really looked like. And I did this in 1993. So I say that to say there was no cell phones. You had to know Chicago's grid system if you were a commuting teenager or person on public transportation. And so on that everyday commute from Inglewood, 15 miles north to my high school, Lane Tech, which, funny enough, is a technical school, architecture school that I had no interest in architecting in high school. But I realized how different my neighborhood looked from the neighborhood that my high school was in. And it just raised a lot of questions. I observed that my neighborhood had a lot of vacant lots. And the neighborhood that my high school was in didn't. I observed that my neighborhood was starting to have a lot of vacant homes, and all of the homes were lived in the neighborhood that my high school was in. And, I just noticed the difference between the businesses. I noticed how my neighborhood had lost a strong business corridor, and there were several thriving business corridors in the neighborhood that my high school is in. But the most interesting part about this whole process of me exploring and understanding what larger Chicago looked like was once I got to high school. I started to meet so many kids from all over Chicago because Lane Tech was a selective enrollment high school, and it is the high school that has the largest student body in Chicago's public school system. There's 4,000 students.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yes. So you can just imagine, a little Black girl from Inglewood just getting dropped into a college campus size high school that really had a demographic that reflected Chicago's demographic. There were equal percentage of Black, Latino, white, and Asian at Lane Tech, because that was the priority of the school at the time. They were able to curate the racial demographic of the high school. Nowadays, they can't do that because of a federal law that passed saying you can't use race as a criteria for education. And I made so many wonderful friends from all different kinds of backgrounds. And that really taught me about the power of connecting to people. I have a friend whose name is Steve Jakevich. He was a white boy that grew up in grew up in Chicago. And that was my first time ever saying a Polish name, like out my mouth every day. Hey.
Yeah.
And I met so many others, my group of Latino friends that I would not have met had I not gone to high school, who were from Humboldt Park and Wicker Park. My friends who were from immigrant families who primarily stayed on the north side. I mistakenly thought they were just like African American like me, but they were from first generation immigrant families, and they were from places like Belize, Panama, and then also my friends who were Asian. I honestly at that age didn't really know that Indians were Asians. I assumed Filipinos were Latinos. It was just a huge cultural exploration that all of us went through during those 4 years in high school. And we hung out with each other in each other's neighborhoods. And that's how I truly got to know Chicago's neighborhoods. And that's when it clicked for me that, oh, you can't really pay attention to the news. Like, you have to know someone to really, truly understand a neighborhood. You have to know someone from that neighborhood. Yeah. So I carried that information with me when I returned to my childhood neighborhood of Inglewood as a homeowner, and a new wife, a new mom. And that's when I started to do a lot of community work and realized that the struggles of my neighborhood dealt with the environment that I was observing as a high schooler, such as vacant lots, the closed schools, the low home ownership, the home vacancies, the high unemployment rate. These are all things that I was learning about in my 20s that I didn't know as a child that my neighborhood was struggling with, but I could remember my observations. And then when the 2016 presidential election came around and Chicago was just talked about constantly in the news, specifically for its gun violence, I personally got frustrated because I knew that there was a larger history that informed the built environment around not only me, but Chicago, and how that built environment impacted how we interacted with each other as residents or not interact with each other. And that's when I started to work on what will become Folded Map, photographing addresses that are similar on Chicago's north and south side on the same streets. And then eventually having people who lived on those same streets, but 15 miles apart, meet each other to have a conversation about their neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's fascinating because I've always thought about that in the context of planning too. So like you mentioned, your background is as an artist, and as it stood, as you got into it, you recognize it actually became community work. And that kind of makes me think about the intersectionality of kind of how planners observe and use that to inform what they do. And so I remember reading about the fact, like you mentioned, segregation has become normalized in Chicago, but it's also a fascinating sociological problem that we have been studying for a long time. And even the term hyper-segregation was coined because of how stark it is visible in a city like Chicago. And that's what I was so fascinated by. Like, you stand on the Red Line platform at Lake or Jackson, and you look at everybody going north is one color, everybody going south is another color, and you're standing there going, how did the city get to this point? And so that was, always something that was interesting to me. And I think that also helps to kind of inform the work that planners do. And so I'm encouraged, and I hope that other planners do what I do when I learned about Folded Map, as I immediately went to Google Maps and I started typing in the north address and the south address for various parts of the city and learning about how their history has been shaped and influenced by kind of what planning has been doing. So it's almost, it's a very good humbling moment to think about planners thought they were doing good work in the 50s and 60s and how that continued through decades later to result in the situation we have today.
Yeah, and then also, I wanted Folded Map to just primarily be an entree into people questioning and understanding that these disparities exist today and they have a history. They didn't come out of nowhere.
Right,
Um,
right.
the issues that pockets of the South Side of Chicago are dealing with, gun violence being one of them, didn't start because of gun violence. Gun violence is actually the kind of last stage of a symptom of discriminatory housing practices. And a lot of people have no idea about that. And I also wanted Folded Map to possibly offer a model of what a solution could be, because we've had policies, of course, segregation is illegal, but yet it still remains the same. So I wanted people to kind of understand that it's a personal endeavor. Like we can't allow it to just be a legal political issue. We have to personalize it. You have to get to know people from different lived experiences, but specifically from different neighborhoods, in order for you to truly understand the difference and what people are going through in the city. There's a huge population in Chicago who are hurting, and they're hurting because of how the city was built, how it was constructed, how it was planned. And laws and policies can't get us there. It can help, everything has to be multi-layered, but the one aspect that I think that 2020 has revealed to us is that it has to be personal. And that was the point and intention of the map twins, the individuals who live on these same named streets but 15 miles apart, actually meeting each other to talk about the difference in their neighborhood, the difference in the necessities, the amenities. And then maybe through understanding that the person that you're interested in meeting and talking to, who might have the same desires, interests as you, doesn't have the opportunity to pursue them because of the built environment and the kind of racist housing policies that were put in place in our country. And Chicago is just a microcosm, a bittersweet microcosm of everything going on in our country right now. And it hasn't changed since the 50s and 60s. Chicago, his segregation has stayed just as stark as it is for decades. And so I really wanted Folded Map to kind of help people take back some of the power, to feel like you don't have to just vote your way out of this and protest and do community work. You can also just get to know someone.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent way to describe it too. And so your journey from being a curious teen who was kind of observing and questioning and getting into your career and recognizing as an artist, it's kind of transformed that. And that's what I was so fascinated by.
One other thing, because Folded Map has just expanded into, it's informed my expansion projects of Folded Map, as well as something that I think you all might be interested in, because it will be available in a couple of weeks from Folded Map's website. Because so many people had an interest in participating as a map twin. And of course, I just couldn't do map twins for the rest of my life. So I wanted to create like a self-guided way for people to enter and explore neighborhoods that are different than their own, but in a way that kind of helps strip away the implicit bias that people have. Because as a photographer, I know that what you have been programmed to notice about people or a neighborhood, that's what you photograph. And so I kind of applied that to just individuals who visit a neighborhood. And so I decided to create a Folded Map action kit, which is just a guided step of errands that I'm inviting people to run in their map twin neighborhood. And in order for people to, find their map twin neighborhood, I had to expand the concept to just being, if you were to fold Chicago's map at its 0 point, which is Madison, what are the neighborhoods that would touch each other? And even beyond that, just go to a neighborhood that's racially, demographically different than yours, because Chicago's so segregated that that right there will be a difference.
Yeah.
And inviting people to run specific errands, like go buy lotion. That's a completely different experience. Go buy an organic apple. Go visit a library, local library. Go take out $20 at an ATM. So people can, as close as possible, walk through their map twin neighbor's shoes,
Yeah.
and bypass, the misperceptions that we've all been taught of these of all neighborhoods. So not just North Siders coming to the South Side, but for also South Siders to do those errands on the North Side, so that they can see how convenient it is, so they can see what they should be entitled to as Chicago residents. And so all of that is through the Folded Map Action Kit, which will be available in a couple weeks. And we're asking people to run these errands and share back their experience.
I think this is a really cool project, and I'm excited to see what you do next.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'll be happy to tell you all what I'm doing next. And that's another year-long, larger project that's really focusing on land sale contracts.
Okay.
Just taking the idea of Folded Map a little further for people to explicitly know this specific practice, that was how it was utilized in the 50s and 60s, and really connecting it to Greater Inglewood, because a lot of people don't know that close to 60 to 70% of the homes in the 50s and 60s in Greater Inglewood were sold on land sale contracts, unbeknownst to the Black families who thought they were purchasing a mortgage. Right. And so that really kind of set up Greater Inglewood for, unfortunately, what it's dealing with today. So the next project is documenting the existing land sale contract homes, sharing some of the purchase history, as well as kind of artistically reimagining what some locations in Greater Inglewood would look like had that legalized theft didn't occur.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm looking forward to people having more of these conversations just as a result of the work that you've done. I think that as planners, we have a responsibility to kind of facilitate these conversations and also kind of speak truth to power about these inequities. And so having worked in communities on the South Side and how very different they are to where I grew up and where I live now is always something that I'm curious to learn more about, and make sure that I'm always aware and sensitive and knowledgeable and understanding of kind of these long-standing inequities. And so there's a lot of work to do, and I'm glad that glad that we have people like you to help guide and highlight some of those things that maybe people don't realize. I mean, even from your years growing up and not knowing, that you have to know about how to navigate the city without Google Maps. I mean, I'm glad we have it as a tool today, but it's fascinating to think about how these things persisted for so long just because people weren't aware.
Yeah, no, I agree. And unfortunately, because of all of those things, people have an exaggerated perception of how divided we are racially, without understanding that as humans, as individuals who all live in Chicago, we have so much in common. Yeah. And when I say so much in common, just interests. Yeah. And long as you pursue your passions or your interests, you will meet people from different backgrounds who share whatever that passion is with you, and just get to know them. Just simply get to know them. And it is fascinating for me to meet so many people who not only are urban planners, but are in school for social sciences, for sociology, to provide social services, but still, have not connected to individuals or have peers who are from the very neighborhoods that they would be serving professionally.
Yeah.
And it really does have to be a personal mission for all of us to correct it.
Because you've been interviewed by so many people, you probably talked about this a ton, but I'm still interested, and I know a lot of people are going to be really excited to watch this video.
Thank you. Well, it has different meaning this year as
Yeah.
opposed to 2018. You know, it was in 2018 a cool art project that was helping people kind of wrap their minds around the present day impact of systemic racism. But today, it's a priority for a lot of people and educators, as it should be.
Yeah.
So even my conversations about it are different.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
This year and today than it was in 2018.
Right.
So,
right.
No, I appreciate it still being something that people like you are interested in, because it definitely has a different meaning today.
So on behalf of APA Illinois, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me this morning. I'm very humbled to kind of extend the award on behalf of the organization, and I'm certainly very thankful for the opportunity to talk with you today. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I enjoyed this, and I really appreciate the honor of being recognized by you all.